All righty. Okay, well, let's get started. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I so move.
Second.
Second.
Call the roll.
Commissioner Newton,
Yes.
Commissioner Patrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Byrne,
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Kirk,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Chair Johnson.
Yes. Okay, we need to approve the minutes. Are there any amendments to the minutes by anyone? Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
I'll
I'll
second.
second it.
Okay, call the roll.
Commissioner Bennett,
I was absent.
Commissioner Kirk,
Yes.
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Newton,
Yes.
Commissioner Patrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Byrne,
Yes.
Chair Johnson.
Yes. Okay, this is a quasi judicial hearing regarding,
No, it's not.
what's that?
This isn't a quasi judicial.
Oh, that's what, that's what I have in front of me. Okay. Okay, then this is Z021-01, Will Rasmussen on behalf of Haystack Rock LLC for a text amendment regarding notice and procedural requirements for conditional use permitting when extending access and utilities of public right-of-way located in oceanfront management and wetland overlay area. The request will be reviewed against the criteria of Municipal Code Section 17.86.070 A amendment criteria. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter at this time? Does any commissioner member believe he or she has a conflict of interest or personal bias? Oh, well, actually, that's kind of out of order too. Okay, the staff report.
All right. I'm going to share my screen here so I can. And while I'm waiting for this to come up, hopefully it's on your screen now, but I would refer anyone who has the opportunity that's online and hasn't taken the Cannon Beach TSP.com, the transportation survey, if they could go to that in the next day or so, because this is kind of the last call for any feedback on our first call for transportation, traffic, parking. Not that there will be any parking issues this weekend, I'm sure, but anything related to that. So on to the staff report. This is a hearing on the zoning amendments changes brought forward by Haystack, mainly about notice requirements and right-of-ways and extensions of streets, access, and driveways. The criteria for review for such things are rather brief, as I point out in the staff report, that proposed text changes to our amendment really, if it's delivery, if they hamper delivery of services or anything like that, then we would call attention to any changes on that, but this likely will not do that. In fact, hopefully this will highlight those issues in the sensitive areas that we're looking at, which are mainly wetland and ocean management, oceanfront management overlay areas. So taking you to the language changes, you'll see that we talk about a new road, driveway approach, or other access that has 50 feet or more linear length in the OM zone right-of-way or in right-of-way within 100 feet of a stream, water course, or wetland. And that's what's referred to in the oceanfront management. Also in 1743 in the wetland overlay, we've taken it out of kind of a development permit activity and put those into conditional use in the wetland areas and the wetland buffer areas, so that if you're extending roads or driveways in those areas, you would have to go through a conditional use permit. And so that's the brunt of the changes. I think one of the letters that we received claimed that this is it should be quasi judicial, that it only affects certain properties. But if you look at the right-of-way constraints maps that I've attached, and I'll show you that map now. It's on your screen. So the right-of-ways is everything in red. Wetlands is everything in the light blue. Wetland lots are the darker blue. You see the stream corridors also in that blue line. I'll also now show you on GIS many of the areas that are affected by that. So anything that you see on the screen that has this green area as a wetland, the blue lines are stream corridors. Just looking at our north area, we're currently looking at development in this area between Ecola Park Road and 6th Street is one area that we're looking at. Extensions of North Hemlock would also come into effect. Areas, anything this green area touches. So each one of these areas, the blue stream corridors, there's many areas in the south Tolovana area, most of those going east towards Highway 101 from Hemlock. Any extension to those could be affected by these kind of conditional use notices. So what this would do would trigger a notice, public notice on these, and then through the conditional use criteria, the public would have an opportunity, and the Planning Commission would have an opportunity to place conditions upon these roadways that would be sensitive to whether it's an oceanfront soils or whether it's a wetland soils or stream corridor area. So that's basically mine. I thought I might let me stop sharing my screen, and then I can let Bill answer any questions you might have on, I think, some of the comments that came up, if you have any.
Yeah.
Bill, can I ask a question? So what was written in that letter about it applying only to that particular lot is just not true, according to what we saw from Jeff.
Certainly would, Jeff is far more familiar with where the zoning, where the stream corridors and wetlands are, but yeah, it appears to apply in a significant swath of the city.
Okay.
So, Will, do you have, is that,
Okay.
do you want to?
Yep.
There were a number of questions raised last week in the minutes, and if you're interested, I can reply to those, or we can just wait and hear the applicant and public and talk about it afterwards, whatever makes sense to the commission.
I was, as there was a request for a continuance, I was just going to hold my questions until we heard additional information.
Until we what?
Until we hear everybody's additional information. I'd like to hear all sides before I ask some of the questions I had initially.
Well, is there a request for a continuance on this or not?
There's been,
I read that there was.
Yeah, there was one submitted with the letter from comment. There's no obligation where the city has to grant the continuance. You certainly can if you want to, whether it's to absorb the new information that comes in tonight, or because you want additional time to think about it.
Well, I think we've thought about it enough. So I mean, I would just as soon if you have questions that you want to bring up, go ahead and bring them up. But otherwise, I was going to say, why don't we just have Will make his statement and we'll decide what we want to do from there.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm here on behalf of applicant. We submitted this code change application following the rules in the city code for proposing a code change. We're following state statute for doing this. I mean, the big picture is cities update their code just like this, Planning Commission and the Cannon Beach City Council has done every year. And when there's a hole in the code or a defect in the code, the cities correct them. And I think there's a pretty gaping hole here. You'll see Mr. Stamp's letter arguing there should be no process for major access applications in these sensitive areas. And most jurisdictions I work in don't let you run a freeway through a wetland or through an oceanfront overlay without some process. I mean, it's really that simple. I thought staff did a good job highlighting how this is a legislative amendment, how this applies citywide. If you look at the maps on page 17 of your packet, you'll see all of those east-west running streets that stub into the beach, just like Nenana. This thing would apply on all of those, and it would apply on wetlands as well. I submitted I submitted a narrower legislative amendment that would have more closely hewed to the facts on unimproved Nenana, and staff kind of, I think rightfully so, said, no, this should apply citywide, and even brought in this new wetland issue that they've been grappling with elsewhere. So it's a pretty straightforward amendment. It fixes a major hole in the code. This is a citywide issue, and it's the kind of thing the city should update. I gave a quick read through the recent submittal from the Roberts' attorney, Mr. Stamp. We certainly welcome them in this process and look forward to hearing their comments. I'd just like to point out this is the first evidentiary hearing in this. So whatever the Planning Commission does, this thing will continue and go on to the council. So whatever input Mr. Stamp and the Roberts want to make in this process, they can, just like every other citizen. The city published notice in this in the local paper, and they're certainly welcome to comment, but the city hasn't done anything wrong here by going through the code specified process to update their zoning code. Just touching on a handful of the comments made in Mr. Stamp's letter. This application is nowhere near a site-specific quasi-judicial application. Commissioner Kerr rightfully asked, geez, this appears to apply citywide. She's correct. And in fact, this does not apply on the Roberts' property. This applies to right-of-way. There's no wetland on the Roberts' property. There's no right-of-way on the Roberts' property. So even if arguably notice should have gone out to impacted property owners under ORS, under the public notice requirements for zone changes, the Robertses wouldn't have been on that list because ORS 227-186 only requires notice to people getting their base zone changed on their property, not to anybody who abuts a right of way or anybody who abuts a property with a wetland or something like that. But that said, that's just about notice, and they're certainly here and certainly welcome to actively participate, and I'd be surprised if they didn't. I'd also highlight that really what this proposal is about is point number 4 in Mr. Stamp's letter. That's where he argues that the city should have no process for reviewing these applications, that they should just be granted as of right. I think that's wrong. Most jurisdictions in Oregon don't allow that for major access applications through sensitive lands. The Robertses also mistakenly try to rely on the goalpost rule here, which has me scratching my head for a number of reasons. That general orientation, the goalpost rule in certain limited situations prevents a city from changing the rules applicable to a pending quasi-judicial application. So a pending site-specific land use application. As this commission knows, there's a dwelling application up on appeal at Luba right now, but the Robertses have specifically not submitted any land use application to the city for access. And as this recent letter shows, they say no such land use application is required. So I don't understand what application would have been finalized under the goalpost rule. And frankly, I'd be curious if they're willing for the Robertses to state which access they think they think of the goalpost rule applies to. The only one I can think of that they got anywhere close to actually submitting was the flying bridge thing that my understanding was they backed off from. At the end of the day, though, this is just a zone change, a zone code amendment request. There's a clear hole in the City of Cannon Beach code. It should update it and correct it. And if the Roberts want to try to argue that they should only have the old rules applied to them, which aren't particularly clear, they can do that in some other venue, but the city has a duty to have as good a code as it can. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'm glad to answer any questions now or later as may be helpful.
Okay. Well, I myself, I'm seeing this, thinking that we should pass this on to the city council, but
Well, we have to public hearing on it.
uh,
So, yeah, so we can, unless there's any other questions of staff, or we'll go ahead and open up the public hearing.
yeah, okay. Is there any other responses by the commissioners?
Well, I just want to say that I think it is true that most jurisdictions in Oregon do have rules like this. I know Clatsop County does. I know that you have to get a conditional use permit to improve a right-of-way in Clatsop County, particularly through a wetland or an oceanfront setback. So it seems to me that this is kind of a no-brainer. That it's just bringing our code up to snuff where it should have been all along.
Bill, do you have concerns about, are you concerned about anything brought up in the letter? Or do you have other concerns given the request, by who the request was made and the timing of the request? As it relates to, any of the concerns brought up or any of the concerns you can think about why we would maybe hold on something like this.
Yeah, and it may be worthwhile to hear from the letter writer who's here and I assume signed up for public testimony to make sure we understand the objections. But certainly as based on just looking at the minutes and what I've got, I don't have any concerns. Cities can and do update their code, when they can. If there's a issue with it, you fix it. If you think you can do something better, you do something better. The goalpost rule is out there specifically to protect people who are doing things in reliance on the existing rules. If an application was filed prior to this taking effect, it's not subject to it. If an application is filed after it takes effect, it is. I don't want to go too far down that explanation because it's relatively simple. Any application currently pending, this doesn't matter to, but anything future coming in will be subject to it. How it plays out, really depends on how access requests come in, whether it's for the Roberts house or any other house that relies on right-of-way improvements in the right-of-way that the city controls.
Thank you.
Well, I was personally uncomfortable with the way it's been presented and the rush to get it completed.
Yeah. And if you're uncomfortable, you certainly can, seek to either continue it or to vote against it if you think it's inappropriate. I guess what I would suggest is, we do have a situation where you've got two neighbors who have opposing views about what should happen in an area. I would say put all that behind you and not focus on who's proposing what, how it'll affect somebody else, but is this a good policy for the city, regardless of the fight between these people? Because this is gonna, whatever application comes in next week, or the week after it goes into effect, it's gonna be affected, but so is an application that comes in 20 years later. And that's really your role in a legislative capacity is this good policy for the city? Is this what we want to see or not? If it is, approve it. If it isn't but close, let's see if we can wordsmith it. If you think it's a bad idea, you vote against it. I would urge you not to think about this in the context of two neighbors feuding, but there's an application that comes in. The city has an obligation to process it and make a decision on it. So that's really where we are.
Jeff, can you update us on the status of the zoning code review? We had talked about several months ago being something we were going to reconsider in June.
Clay, I'm excited you brought that up because yes, that is a discussion item after these, because we are signing the contract and I've got an update for you that came before City Council last night and with the proposed plan and certain dates to kind of ask you to get on your calendar.
Can you give me a sneak peek in terms of dates? Are we
yeah,
years out, months out?
Well, we're going to be proposing a 2-track process, and we would hope that the track 1 items would start pretty much immediately and would be making your way as soon as the next meeting towards you, some changes, followed by the full code audit, which will take about a 9-month process. And those meetings your joint meetings would start in August on those.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody else that would like to comment?
I'm going to let Mr. Stamp.
Okay.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Andrew Stamp. I'm an attorney representing the Roberts family. As you know, they own undeveloped property in the city of Cannon Beach, north of Nenana Avenue. It's tax lot 600. It's right south of the Haystack Rock LLC property. So I heard the testimony tonight. I understand that you may want to make some changes to your code to deal with the wetlands issue. We don't necessarily have a problem with that. But the timing of this is pretty suspicious, and also the fact that the proposal was made by really the neighbor who's feuding with us on our right to develop a house on our property. The Newports have made no bones about the fact that they don't want us to have a house. They don't want us to have anything close to what they have. And so that makes that creates an aura of unfairness around this entire process. And I think really what this looks like is, sort of the Cannon Beach good old boy network helping out one landowner to kind of screw over another landowner. And it just really reeks. So, from my standpoint, the fact that we didn't even get notice of this until today, until last night, kind of confirms that suspicion. We could have even if we weren't legally entitled to any notice, which I think we were, it would have been the fair thing and the nice thing to give us a courtesy notice because it obviously affects us. Now, and that never happened. So this just smells bad. The entire thing makes the city look, frankly, I don't know what the right word is, but not on the up and up. Now, with regards to notice, I mean, there's some irony here that this is being billed as a notice provision, and yet we didn't even get notice of this proceeding. So I guess the irony shouldn't be lost on anyone here. But truthfully, it's not about notice. The notice is kind of a secondary thing. It's being presented as the main aspect of this, but really, Haystack Rock LLC knows damn well that this has nothing to do with notice. This has to do with conditional use criteria, because once you make something a conditional use, that means you can deny it outright. So you don't have to approve a conditional use. If you determine via very discretionary criteria, extremely discretionary criteria, that and we've seen how the city employs its discretionary criteria rather loosely. You can just simply deny access, and therefore, if we don't have access, we don't have development rights. So, you know, that's the real goal here of Haystack Rock, is to try to stop development. They don't care about notice. They could just send a letter to the planning director and say, hey, if anything happens on Nenana, give us notice. Let us know. And that would be sufficient to preserve their right to notice. They don't need a code amendment for that. So, I mean, that's done with notice. Let us know. And that would be sufficient to preserve their right to notice. They don't need a code amendment for that. So, I mean, that's done routinely in Oregon. So really what this is about is trying to stop development on tax lot 600. And I think it's a bad idea. Now everyone's saying, oh, well, all the cities do this. Well, I don't think that's true. I don't think too many cities have a conditional use permit to make improvements in the right of way, but I haven't had time to research it. It's certainly not something that I've seen very often in 22 years of practicing land use. Now, I have seen counties that require a conditional use permit for new right of way. And I've actually have an application in with Yamhill County right now where we are going through a conditional use permit to put in 1,000 foot of new county road. So the counties do have those type of provisions, but this is an existing right of way that was platted. So I think that's a way different scenario. And I don't really know what you're going to accomplish by having a conditional use permit. The thing about this is that if you deny access on Nenana completely, then we have a right to seek a way of necessity. And frankly, from our standpoint, maybe it's just better to get that way of necessity through the Haystack Rock property. There would be some advantage to that, and it probably is better for the community in the long run anyway, than having access to Hemlock off of Nenana. But what we'd like to do is to be able to put in a private driveway on Nenana. Nobody else needs Nenana. If they ever want to put a hiking trail on it, there's still room to do that too. But I don't even really see that happening. But if it does, we can accommodate that. Certainly, there's no other lot that needs access other than ours. So I just don't see what the point is of requiring conditional use criteria to make access improvements. So the other thing to think about is, in my letter, I've talked about measures 56 notice requirements. That applies to rezoning, but rezoning is defined rather broadly as any change in the code that would limit the uses allowed on the property. Certainly, if you have a conditional use permit requirement for access and then you deny access, that limits our ability to develop our property. So the measure 56 notice certainly applies in this case. We did not receive that. With regards to the goalpost rule, the city will recall that we originally submitted 3 applications, 2 of which were tabled, and the city only processed 1 of our applications. The other 2 applications were never denied. They are still sitting out there. They are pending. And to that extent, now that was an application for public road improvements. So that's still out there. But of course, we're going to submit a new application for private road improvements in the next, frankly, as soon as we can get them done, but way before this ordinance ever gets passed. So, you know, we will ensure that that occurs. But I I think that the whole idea here is a poor idea and it's not really necessary. So I would encourage the planning commission to take a breather on this. I'd say a 60-day, maybe a 90-day breather so that we can do some more research on the types of provisions that other cities have with regards to making private improvements on public right-of-way. We can bring back a more well-researched report. Obviously, since we only found out about this yesterday, we didn't have the time today to do that type of research. We do think that the way that the application was originally presented would be quasi-judicial. I'll have to take a look at what I saw today, those pictures from the staff report, which I really haven't analyzed. And I'm not even clear how staff would make an amendment to an application submitted by a private party. I'm not sure how that works. But again, it seems like there's a lot of collusion here between staff and Haystack Rock, which makes me very uncomfortable, particularly in light of the fact that we didn't get notice. So in any event, I'd like to see a continuance. I'd ask for 90 days and come back in 90 days with more thoughtful comments. Thank you for your time.
All right, and we also have Kevin Newport. Kevin, can you unmute Kevin?
Are we able to hear him?
Yes.
Jeff, I'm pretty sure it was Kevin Patrick, not Kevin Newport tonight.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that.
No worries at all.
Go ahead, proceed.
Did we see it on here?
I think it was stamped that was coming.
Andrew, did you speak instead of Kevin Patrick? Do you know if he was planning on talking tonight too?
Oh, I don't think he was, no.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Andrew. Anyone else, Andrew, from your team?
No, not that I know of.
Okay, thank you. And if anyone else wants to, I think we have a hand raise option. Okay, well.
Just whenever the public's done, I'd like the usual short rebuttal time. I think that
Sure.
might have been everybody from the public.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay, go ahead, proceed.
Just three short things. First, to hear a suggestion that I'm in the Cannon Beach good old boy club potentially kind of warms the cockles of my heart if, to defend play back several hearings where I was not anywhere close and in fact quite the bad guy. So I think it just depends on the given application. Second, all the talk about notice at this point is moot. Obviously, Mr. Stamp and the Roberts can participate in this process. If the Planning Commission passes this tonight, the ability to comment and participate will continue for at least, through at least one city council hearing, maybe more. And that's the way the public process works, is everybody can show up and put in their 2 cents. So it's kind of moot at this point. And third, regarding the process for this application, we read the code, we read the rules, we read what it took to submit a legislative amendment to the city. We paid a $1,000-some application fee to have you guys consider this. And we just hope that you will kind of do your duty as a planning commission and just weigh this on its merits. Do you think there should be no process for major access applications through sensitive areas, or do you not? I think I'd be surprised if the city wants to let any application run without any process at all. That'd be kind of crazy to me, but it's really up to you. So thank you for your time this evening. Thank you for your energy in considering this, and I hope you'll just take it up and pass it along to the city council.
Can I did want to speak to also Mr. Stamp's thoughts of collusion, is that if he goes back and reads the minutes of the previous work sessions or watches the tapes, I believe that I came out against this to table this till code audit was accomplished. And we then worked with the applicant to, like I said, broaden the scope, because I believe it should have been broadened if we did address it. So I welcome him to look back at all of the record on this. And just like any citizen in a legislative matter, they can get the notice from the newspaper or from our website, check the agendas, and happy to look at any record. And if you want me to help them find the record, I'm happy to get that for you. So anything else? Let me ask, Lisa, did you have something?
No, I just wanted to make a motion that.
And if I can touch on one thing, follow up on Jeff before you can do it, just to make sure we get this out there. The Newports or Haystack Rock was free to submit this application as any other property owner in the city is. And under the city's code, 1786-060, the procedure is the planning commission shall hold a public hearing, and you create a recommendation that you forward to the city council. And then the city council may hold a public hearing, may not, but your job, the planning commission is required to hold a public hearing whenever an application comes in. The recommendation goes forward, and the council can then do what it wants. It doesn't actually have to act on it if it doesn't want to, but it can. It will take your recommendation in due course.
So I'm making a motion that we accept these amendments as the staff outline them in our materials and forward it to the planning commission.
But city
council.
Forward to the city council, Lisa?
Yes, I'm sorry, forwarded to the city council, yes.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay, call the roll.
Commissioner Patrick,
No.
Commissioner Byrne,
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes,
Commissioner Knott,
Yes.
Commissioner Newton,
Yes.
Chair Johnson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. This is a quasi judicial hearing regarding the public hearing and consideration of SR 21-04. James Adams and Carrie Berg, property owners of 264 West Canine Street, for a setback reduction of a rear yard setback requirement for an accessory structure at the existing single-family residence.
I've got to go. I'm sorry.
Bye, Lisa.
Bye.
Bye.
Hasta la bye-bye.
Okay, SR 21-04, James Adams and Carrie Berg, application to allow a setback reduction to reduce the rear yard setback from the required 15 feet to 7 feet to rebuild the existing garage dash shed according to chapter 17.12, residential moderate density zone in the municipal code. The property is located at 264 West Kenine Street, tax lot 6901, map 41006 BC in the residential moderate density zone. The request will be reviewed against municipal code section 17.64.010 setback reductions provisions established. Does anyone object to the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter at this time? Does any member believe he or she has a conflict of interest or personal bias? Has any member had an ex parte contact or made a site visit?
And a site visit.
Site visit.
Site visit.
Okay, staff report?
All right, I'm going to share my screen again. All right. This is Adamsburg. Property owners are seeking a rear yard setback of 8 feet, reducing the required rear yard from 15 to 7. I'll just jump and highlight the main portions of this, and then we'll let the applicant speak. But it's an existing 280 square foot non-conforming shed, and it's located in the required rear yard. And there appears no evidence of any previous land use action sought pertaining to its location, and was likely in existence prior to the adoption of the zoning codes. Due to Cannon Beach Municipal Code 1782, 40 non-conforming structures would apply to the structure requiring any enlargement or alteration, increasing the non-conformity to seek a setback reduction. And that's what brought them here this evening. And so I'll move to the criteria for setback reduction. Total building coverage falls within the limits there at 36%. Significant views of the ocean, mountain, or similar features should not be affected by this, but we did have a comment from a neighbor, which I'll speak to here in a minute, and I'll show you my understanding, and then I'll turn over the application and let him comment on that as well. Proposed building location will not interfere with solar access. From my understanding and from the way that I see the extension, it shouldn't have any effect. And then under the 1764-10A4 criteria, which asks which of these it applies to, the applicant has provided that the setback reduction protects the neighboring property's ocean view, considering that the applicant is wishing to preserve an existing somewhat historic structure in keeping with the existing surrounding structures rather than alternatives which might be more detrimental to neighboring views. This seems like a plausible alternative to staff. Right away and traffic hazards will not be affected. The encroachments into the setbacks. The proposed expansion is not seeking to extend beyond the 5-foot side yard setback to the eastern property and only extending in the rear yard encroachment that already exists. This expansion should have negligible impact on privacy of the abutting properties. And so, as mentioned, I would recommend approval on this. I did want to kind of highlight, like I said, we had a public comment on one of these that I wanted to touch on. And so they had asked about the view from neighboring property and whether the height would be increased. And from my understanding, from the elevations that we have, the height's not going to be affected, or the tower of where that little turret, I hate to say that word anymore, but where that turret might be located, I don't think that changes. And so I'm going to let the applicant speak to that. All I can say is if you can save that historic little structure, staff wants to highly recommend that. So I drove out there, took pictures for the application, and it is a unique little area. So I'm going to, any other questions from staff? Or
No, I'll just,
okay.
There's no other additional correspondence.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. The pertinent criteria to be considered are noted in the staff report and listed on the criteria sheet on the meeting page of the city website. Testimony, argument, and evidence must be directed towards that criteria or other criteria in the comprehensive plan or municipal code which the person testifying believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statement or evidence sufficient to afford the decision makers and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes the appeal based on that issue. Prior to the conclusion of the initial evidentiary hearing, any participant may request an opportunity to present additional testimony, argument, evidence regarding the application. The Planning Commission shall grant such a request and continue the public hearing, leaving the record open for written testimony, argument, and evidence. Persons testifying, please identify your name and mailing address, and if you're representing, and if you're a representative, identify who you represent. Is there a presentation by the applicant?
The applicant is here. And I guess mostly I'm here to answer questions, but I would like to just, I know a lot of you have been out to see it.
Yeah, state your name and mailing address.
Okay, sorry. Name is James Adams. Mailing address is Post Office Box 91, Tollabon Park, 97145.
Yep.
Okay, I'll jump into it. I felt that it was important enough to, that we're asking for it to be here. The real issue that it comes down to is sightlines. The shed, as we call it, was there when we bought the property 12 or 13 years ago. It was much cuter than the rest of the property, and we've been told that for years now. Everybody seems to love that little shed. And I think the development of the neighborhood, if you will, the two houses to the east, have sort of orchestrated themselves around this view corridor, because there's a view corridor between our house and that shed, and also our neighbors to the west. So we enjoy an ocean view through a sight line between our neighbors to the east, or our neighbors to the west, and both of the homes to the east of us enjoy it. One from their deck, and one the house is sighted back far enough that they have a sight line through there. So all of them were very concerned and hoping that we would be able to keep the shed where it is, as opposed to moving it forward, because if you do move it forward, it will impact their sight line significantly, basically taking away their ocean view from the back of their property. So that's really what we're trying to do. Obviously, we want to make it a little wider so we can actually park a car there, and not have them also in their view. So that's the big idea. We want to keep it looking just like it does now. It's not a change of trying to make it something different. It's just that we didn't realize when we bought it, or that, again, how it got built there where it did. We didn't realize it didn't conform at the time.
Right. So looking at the drawing on A here, so are you building south from where the building is now, or are you building to the west?
The only change, the footprint would stay exactly the same, except if you look, Jeff's sharing his screen, there's a little bit of a hatched area. We're coming out about 2 feet 8 inches onto to the east, which gives us the width to have a car park in that structure.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's the only change, and that is still within. That's not where we need the setback reduction. That still conforms to the code, staying 5 feet off the property line. It's where it's currently situated. It is too far back, or too far to the north on the property to meet the current code.
So yeah, as Mr. Adams says there, see that 5 foot right there on the east to lot 4, that it's on the screen now. He's really only asking for this from that corner. The northeast corner would be 8 feet down, and that's really what he's asked for, that little square there. And that is not going into the setback to the east. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Crosshatch there.
Yeah. Okay, are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, are there any presentations by opponents? Are there any presentations by opponents?
We've received none, and we have not received any requests to speak either.
Yeah, okay. Okay, if that's the case, does anybody want to make a motion or further discussion?
I move that we approve the request.
I second it.
Any further discussion?
What?
Okay, then let's call the roll.
Commissioner Knopf,
Yes.
Commissioner Newton,
Yes.
Commissioner Patrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Byrne,
No.
Commissioner Bennett,
Yes.
Chair Johnson.
Yes. Okay, it's approved.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, is there a motion for the chair to sign the appropriate orders.
Oh, I just thought of something. Jeff, was that a tentative approval? Do we need to tentatively approve that?
I don't think so. I mean, you
Okay.
guys, it was straightforward. I don't think there's anything that we need
Not
to.
much wordsmithing. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for thinking that, Clay.
Does anyone have a motion for the chair to sign the appropriate orders?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Commissioner Knopf,
Yes.
Commissioner Newton,
Yes.
Commissioner Patrick,
Yes.
Commissioner Burnt,
Yes.
Commissioner Bennett,
Yes.
Chair Johnson.
Yes. Okay. Any questions on the tree report? Any updates on planning items?
Yes, so thank you. I'd like to update you really quick on the code audit process and update. We're in the middle of signing the contract, or we're negotiating the contract with the applicants. The applicant team that the consultant team, excuse me, that we chose is HerbWorks, which is here on the screen, and they're from the Portland area. I will put in the packet last night at the council has their interview or application and their interview presentation that they did for the interview, and which goes through this process. But what I wanted to touch on was in our discussion with them and from our meetings with you, the DRB, and the city council, we had proposed, if you'll recall, doing the code audit in a 3 to 4 meeting joint work session type of process. And so we said, we had that outlined, and they had that in their project scope and scope of work and timeline. And when we had the discussion with them, we knew that there's been major concern at all 3 levels, DRB, Planning Commission, and City Council, over the last 6 months with housing sizes, combining of lots, the FAR and lot coverage, maximizing lots. And then last night when we brought it up, the City Council tacked on no planned developments. And so those 3 major concerns are so pressing that we felt we would develop a 2-track process. And so the schedule that we have drafted up here before you, which takes us at least to the September, shows kind of that draft proposed dates for each one of these tasks. And we'll be getting this material to you probably in the next week once we sign the contract, show you guys these tentative dates. And discuss them at our next meeting. But as you can see, we've already scheduled the council last night, you guys, and we hope to call a special call meeting next week with the DRB to present this 2-track proposal. The 2-track method would bring those 3 major points in a zoning ordinance amendment to you guys at the earliest possible timeline, which would then, as I've drafted, hit you in a work session in July. It would then go to a public hearing in August for the Planning Commission. Depending on how that goes, it could go as early to October to the City Council for their consideration for those major 3 points. And those again were combining of lots, number 2, maximizing lot coverage in FAR, and 3, striking or getting rid of the plan develop as an option in the ordinance. And so each one of those will go through the full zoning ordinance process. And yet that would streamline that process. The others, like I said, would take about 8 months, 9 months for the true code audit and the full consideration. Do you guys have any questions on that or thoughts?
So what's the input?
So my hope from you guys tonight is that this sounds like a rational process, that this two-track process is a rational process, and we will finalize this with the consulting group over the next 2 weeks.
Where's the input?
There's going to be plenty of input on you mean for the code audit or for the two-track process?
Well, I'm not clear. I guess I'm not clear what the two-part process is and how that dovetails with, running the audit itself. And you get all these dates, that's fine, but who's ginning up the program?
So you guys will have joint work sessions with the 3 scheduled joint work sessions on the code audit. The first one would be in August. The second one is scheduled for sometime in September. And then the third one would be in October. And so, it's a mini stepped process to get there, and what we've tried to do is allow a project management team, which is the consultants and myself and the city manager. Then we will have a technical team that's made up of the department heads and liaisons from our Public Works Committee and other affected committees that work with the code. And then finally, the joint work sessions where you guys will get to vet each step along the process. The only thing with the two-track is that are those 3 points, and that's the only thing that's going to be discussed in those zoning ordinance amendments, the first ones that will be coming to you at the next work session.
So who's writing those?
So who's actually going to write the zoning amendments? I've drafted up the first draft of 3 different, what I said, 3 different scenarios for these track 1 changes. So I see kind of 3 different approaches you could take to making those changes. And there's a fairly simple one. And then there's one that really gets into the FAR and the lot coverage. And then the third is to put limits upon housing sizes and things like that. That's a little bit more cut and dry than the lot coverage FAR kind of ratios. But each one of those are just 3 different scenarios that I'll bring for you in a work session next month that you guys then will get to discuss which ones you think might be the best way to handle these 3 issues.
Including sticking where we're at?
Yeah, exactly, including staying where it is. And the point that I brought up with the council last night, and I think that you guys really should be aware that this 2-track process, it's to get these things in place that on the combining of lots and lot coverage and things like that. But with the code audit, after you see how these work with the larger picture done through the code audit, looking at the comprehensive plan, you might decide 9 months from now to change or tweak some of those things that we put in place with the fast track, track 1 option. So, I think it's like discussed earlier with Will and Bill and Andrew, is that legislative changes, this is a chance for you guys to plug holes, work on these zoning ordinance changes. I do think there's areas that we need to change, and some of them are just standing out recently and we're becoming more and more aware of it with the development that's happening. I do not go at least a week usually 3-4 times a week, discussing lots that have wetlands, that have stream corridors, that have oceanfront setbacks. Every single property falls into these kind of areas. And Joe, to get also to your point on whether we need to change certain ones or change any of them, but also you yourself have been asking to change the setback reduction one since I've been here, honestly. And so this is an opportunity to look at those in reference to all of the code.
Okay.
Any thoughts or questions from anyone?
It may be laid out here, Jeff. Will the group that is doing this code audit be present in those workshops, or will there be an opportunity for us to interact with them? Okay, so it's not just a different.
Yeah, and in fact, that's, we hope by that time that we can do all of these in person and, as part of the whole process will be a public process that's
great.
Hopefully.
Okay. Is there anything for good of the order?
Jeff, can you update us on the how we went from the Nicholson development going to create a homeowners association to my latest understanding that there is no requirement for them now to have a homeowners association?
I can say that the decision, which was the original plan development decision on Nicholson, did not require a homeowners association. That determination is in the findings of that decision.
There was a discussion with homeowners in the Nicholson development talking about creating that. What happened, if you know?
Yes, I agree. And I have, in fact, am still in contact with, I think they are calling themselves the North Laurel Homeowner Street Homeowners Association. At least those owners are still, I emailed them today to get an update on that because the last time I spoke with them, it was on hold for the Najimi before Luba. And so to update you on that, that has been finalized, the Luba decision, and Bill might want to speak to that. But Najimi Luba decision came back and that decision said that they must remove the turret, that it does exceed the building height, but that they emphasized that the city was not allowed to go back into the plan development findings and look at the common outdoor living space and other things like that in a building permit review. Bill, did I capture that okay?
Yeah, that's, a succinct summary of the decision, and I'm happy to answer questions or go into more detail about anything if the commission would like.
Any updates?
So how do we get stuck in this position?
Go ahead.
I think I'm just amplifying your questions too.
Okay.
Actually, one more thing. Any update on the living wall?
Yes,
we've been on this for a while.
Yeah, Clay, that was also in my email to them requesting an update on the living wall. Last time I spoke with them is that they were getting new plant material and they were going to be planting. And so I requested, the Planning Commission had requested me to do yearly inspections over the next 3 years. And so I've requested that inspection and so I could come back and give you guys an update.
Yes, please.
Okay, if there is nothing more, we are adjourned.
Good night,
Right.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all. Stay cool.
Bye.